Hello, and welcome to Writing Quest. Is this episode 10?
This is episode 10.
Episode 10! We made it
10 episodes.
Whoa. Today, in this episode, we are going to talk about the beginning of Chapter 4. So the last episode, we ended Chapter 3. I don't know if it was shocking, but pretty shocking, I suppose so. So we're jumping into Chapter 4. I had written a part that I thought was the beginning of Chapter 4, and then Aiden added the actual beginning to Chapter 4.
What?
So, without further ado, Writing Quest!
What's up?
You wrote some stuff, and you kind of flipped mine on its head.
Okay, so, like, 4 or 5 episodes ago, I wrote, Ro runs into the courtyard, trips, has a wolf puppy in her hands, and then, boom, she gets imported away. And I wrote that randomly because I felt like that was the next big thing that needs to happen because the story was going in a very boring way. And
it really, I mean, it's taken off pretty well.
It's taken off well. Like, it was not a linchpin, but it really, like...
It's the inciting incident.
Yes.
If you need to catch up on the story, by the way, check out our Wattpad.
It's true.
Yep.
Yeah, you can read everything all the way through. We update it every time.
Pretty much every time any one of us writes, I update it. I haven't put up this yet, but I'll get it up.
Yeah, we're getting there. So the so how it ends is she gets imported away. Boom, she was running from the giant dark beast,
which at the time we didn't know what it was.
Didn't know what it was.
Now we do.
It's still called the dark beast.
Yeah, we don't have a name for it, but
it's basically like a bear wraith.
I know what I want the origin to be, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's how it ends. Brendan wrote a little bit about. Started chapter 4, and you started it with Guyan kicked the beast's shoulders, rolling it over. It lay motionless next to a large wolf, also dead, most likely killed by the beast before they had arrived. So,
which I wrote that part because I knew that they weren't there. They didn't know. They hadn't really seen the wolf.
Yeah, they hadn't seen the wolf, not from Rose's perspective.
Yeah.
Great, fine, awesome, but. 2 things struck out at me, and you did more here and stuff with Agorth and Guyan and whatnots, but in my brain I was like, whoa, you just like left them, super intense moment with a beast that should be really hard to defeat, and then apparently it was so easy to defeat you didn't even write about it.
Well, no.
And these are going to be like the enemy beasts, like the villain nature thing. So I was like, well, if these aren't really that big a deal, then why do they matter?
Okay, I know why they matter. I'm going to blow your mind later.
So, but before you...
This was my thought. The end of the last chapter in the last episode, we saw that I wanted to show they go into fight and you see a little bit of the fighting, but Ro doesn't know what happens.
Right.
So at the end of that chapter, you don't know what happened to Guyan and Agorath.
Right.
So my thought was... That's like the tension reliever when the next one starts. It starts, and they're like, the battle's done.
Right.
But, yeah.
So I wrote in here, I just wrote the battle scene.
Yeah.
Instead. So like I gave weight to, this creature is actually hard to defeat, and I also needed to show that Agorth and Guyan aren't just these plot invincible warriors.
Yeah.
You know, so like
they're good, but not that good.
Yeah, they're still like human. They can still get like beaten or eaten. So I gave them like Agorth almost dies, right? But Guyan saves him, and also I wanted to show just how important it was that even though Guyan and Agorth like are in kind of schism now, they work really well together.
Yeah. Also
implying that they were trained together as children.
Yeah.
So, also opening up the idea of how magic works with the staff and stuff.
Yes, which we will get to magic in this episode.
So, very excited because we finally figured it out. But yeah, so that's kind of what I did there. And yes, you're right. Like, the idea of what happened to Guyan and Agorth, but I want to actually show what happened. It's not just like, they died, you know. Or they just, they defeated the wolf, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's because it needs, if this is going to be the threat for them, it needs to be like, we got away just barely.
So maybe what we can show, maybe we need to mishmash 3 and 4 a little bit more show a little bit more of the battle in chapter 3, like what you've written here.
Mm-hmm.
But they're fighting it while protecting Ro.
Yes.
And then, right at the end, they're finally able to say, Ro, go! And then Ro leaves.
Yes.
And then we could start this next chapter with, they did defeat it. So, like, they start fighting it, fighting it. You don't quite get the conclusion. So, like,
Right.
we show the whole battle scene.
We need to show it with Agorath almost getting killed.
Yes. We show almost the whole battle scene. Maybe Agorath almost dies. Guyan saves him. Then they finally get Ro out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you don't know what happens.
I think about...
Because it still needs to be from Ro's perspective.
Yes, but no and statements, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we talk about this a lot, the Brandon Standard.
It's what we're doing right now.
It's what we're doing. Dude, I love it. So they bring in, he brings in a guest speaker who I can't remember the name of her. She's an author. She gives this guest lecture and it was really awesome. And she talks about yes, but no and as like the first part of the book, because yes, they succeed, but this was the consequence, or no, they didn't succeed, and it's worse. Right? And just wait, it gets worse. Which I really like that idea.
So it's yes, but no, and.
Yes, and then when it switches, like in Act 3, yes, they win, and they also got some more here. Or, no, they didn't win, but they did. So it switches in that later part when they start succeeding. Yeah. So I really like that, and I was thinking for this, yes, they win, but they lost Ro.
Yes.
Or, yes, they win, but they barely won by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah.
And the next time we can make, like, this was just a baby.
We'll get there when we talk about the awakening. I have an idea.
Oh, dear. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Do check out the Wattpad, because the story is starting to get so big that you need to know what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We definitely want to hear some ideas, and I think at some point we're going to try to do some reading episodes, but the just amount of content, like I think right now, how many words do we have? We have 8,565 words.
Pushing 10.
Pushing 10. So that's a lot of words for us to be able to get through.
We did a little bit of recapping in the last episode, so you can watch that if you want to. But yeah, we should do some reading episodes.
I think it'd be good.
Yeah, I think that's all good. So next to this is the awakening. I got to talk about it.
Okay, so that was where the story sits right now.
That's where the story sits right now.
Into some backstory.
Okay, into some backstory. So, okay, I figured out how the beginning of this happens, which I won't go into all of that. So the awakening is an event we talk about in the first episode, I think, or second, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And it's in the beginning chapters. They basically are fleeing an apocalypse. So they blew up their home. This happened. Okay. So the awakening was this. They had an ever tree.
Yes. I think we talked about that.
And this ties into the magic. It all makes sense in a bit. They were taking advantage of the ever tree. So the ever tree kind of started withering and dying.
Gotcha.
What they didn't know, because it's kind of an original sin story. Not original sin, that's the wrong one. The ever tree was holding back the dark creatures. So the ever tree is withering because they're abusing its power. The ever tree dies. These dark beasts are the awakening. They
bleeding into this world?
Well, so let me get there. Okay. So they awaken, overrun their world, and destroy it. Because the Evertree was holding it back, and they didn't know this. They got overwhelmed, and then they flee.
So then they'd recognize this beast.
So for Guyan and Agorath, when Ro sees this, it's been years. She doesn't know what this is. Because she wasn't at the awakening.
Right, it might have just been glimmers or something.
Yeah. She's traveled. She was maybe born somewhere else in the time. Because they've been traveling for a while.
Right.
Yeah. So if she's only 16 or 15, they've probably done a few of these imports. We've talked about that. Mm-hmm. So she might not know what this is. when Guinan and Agorath see it, and this is what we got to add, they go, "What? How is this here?" Big brain.
Big brain.
So this, like, I think personally, I feel like we've done a good job of all of a sudden we've set everyone into motion. Well, Ro gets transported, and we've set her up for her storyline.
Yes.
But I was kind of like, what do we do with Guinan and Agorath? So Ro's gone. So really, at that point, all they have is finding Ro. This gives them a mystery to solve.
But are they still trying to find a place for their people to be?
So,
because the reason that I was thinking it was winter, which we talked about in the last episode, the disagreements on what season it was, the reason I was thinking it was winter is because it's more barren where they're at. And they need to move.
So they're in an evergreen forest.
Yes.
At the base of the mountains.
Because it's evergreen.
Yeah. So they have the tertiary motivation is that they are trying to establish their civilization. Okay?
That seems like a primary motivation.
That's their secondary motivation. Okay. It starts as their primary motivation. Okay. That's their main goal. We got to establish our thing. Once Ro disappears, that becomes secondary. Their primary is now finding Ro.
But she's just one person. And the import could take her anywhere. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, she's dead to them. Yeah. That's what we've kind of talked about.
So, regardless of that stuff, this provides the mystery to solve and the danger. So now they're trying to establish their civilization, but they're being chased from a beast from their past.
Yeah. So do we need to make these attacks more frequent? So
now it's like they're trying to do what they wanted to do in the first place, but this is now an obstacle that they need to keep avoiding. And also for Guinan and Agorath, they're trying to figure out why it's happening. Right. How did they get here? You know? That makes sense?
Kind of makes sense. If Ro's going to the Evertree,
yes.
So she's considered dead, but all intents and purposes. Or so far away,
they don't know how to proceed.
They have to just accept that she's dead because it would be when they find. That's why I was thinking maybe it's a coincidence, or they have a mental dooley hoop.
Oh, you're gonna do the thing where I'm making it too big, but I have an idea.
You're making it too big. I can already tell.
Okay.
Please, go on.
So, I don't know. This is starting to get out of hand.
It's almost like we need an outlining episode. Every single...
Does that work for the Awakening, though?
Okay.
I think that works. So the tree dies, they abuse it. The Awakening is these creatures not being held back and attacking. And then they transport here, the beast has followed them. And then they start popping up. So it adds the danger. And then what we could do is they're trying to establish their civilization while on the run of avoiding these creatures.
Establish civilization. Yeah. I think at that point it's just survival. So it's survival of their society.
Yeah. So now both sides are a survival story. They're trying to survive and get to a better place while being chased by this menace from their past.
Yes, and we've already talked about they can't go north, they can't go west, and they can't go east. So
Ro has been transported to the other side. She's going to start learning the ways of magic and the Evertree and all that stuff while trying to survive. So it's a survival story plus a master apprentice type thing.
Did she already have magic before?
No. I'll get there. So she's trying to find them, but also learning the ways of magic and her wolf pup and all that stuff. She can save them from the dark beasts, and that's how it ends. And then they establish their kingdom and live happily ever after.
Interesting.
Are you with me?
There's so much.
I know. I don't think it's one book, bro. I think it's a series.
Not one book, but for this first book, we got to for this first book, we have to reconnect Guinan and Agorath to Ro. They have to find each other. which means the dark beasts, we got to keep using them minimally, and we need to hike up their power so they're more of a threat.
Yeah.
That's why killing them in this first scene, or in chapter 4, killing them so quickly can't do, unless there's just so many of them.
Or maybe it's weak because it came through the import or something. Who knows?
Yeah, something like that. Or they encounter more and more powerful ones.
Yeah.
Stuff. So we need...
So the end of the book is them finding each other. So what's the final conflict then?
I got it. Ready?
Oh, dear God.
Okay. I had to think for a second.
You ready? You ready?
You ready? So they get to the Evertree. So, right, so they're going, or whatever. Or Ro discovers what the Evertree is. Mm-hmm. And then she somehow, like, she starts having dreams or something, or whatever, visions, and she reaches out to them and is like, you have to find me. This is the place to be. Mm-hmm. This is where you have to go. This is where you'll survive. Like, she gets premonitions of, oh, the awakening is coming. They have to save the world because they came over and they destroyed they're going to wreck everything. The only thing that can save them is getting to the Evertree.
The Evertree can give her that mission. Hey, they are following you here, and we need to seal them away again.
Yes. But it needs to be far less obvious. So, like, that needs to be a drawn-out thing. So, they need to just be running away. Mm-hmm. And they already know they can't go north because cold. They can't go west because edge of the world. Edge of the map. South, more forest. I don't know, or something. We say it in the book somewhere. I don't know. Yeah. So they go towards the Evertree. I also had a thought about the construction of your world. Mm-hmm. So you know the difference between Tolkien's world and C.S. Lewis's world. Mm. This might actually be wrong. C.S. Lewis's world, for sure, is a 2D world. It's not a sphere, right? Yeah. So it's got walls. I think we should do the same thing for your world, okay? For this world. And because I have this vision in my brain, this image of Ro or somebody holding on to the deepest root, and below them is just void, and the rest is the Evertree holding it all together.
That might be too far for me. Maybe we'll get there.
Did I huff too much from the joint?
Whoa!
Think about it.
Okay. Let's reel this back in.
Okay.
So we at least know what the awakening is.
We know what the awakening is.
I think that works for now.
Yeah. And they could be like the Dishonored Dead.
Yeah. Well, so I can talk. Do you want me to talk about the origins of these beasts?
Do you have the origins of the
beasts? I have an idea about them. Well, I have an idea about what they become.
Okay, go. Loose.
But my idea is that if you ever seen the movie Priest.
Okay.
I was talking about this the other day. Priest is like this. It's kind of the story of like the first human vampire. So like there's the vampires that are just these like in that movie. The vampires are these just monstrous like Neanderthal creatures. There's no higher functioning power. They're just a monster.
Right.
So it's kind of this origin story of like the human vampire. So it's like a monstrous vampire bites a human, and now it's the vampires as we know them. My idea is that something similar. These beasts are the monstrous creature that eventually somehow bites a human or a wolf or something, and they become werewolves. So it's the
origin of werewolves.
The origin of a werewolf, the monster and the man coming together to make something in the middle.
Gotcha. Or a werebear.
Or a werebear. Bears.
Druids.
Beats. Whoa.
Battlestar Galactica.
So, that's that. That's the origin of that. So,
okay, with that, sorry, we can get into the origin of magic after this, or not the origin of magic, but just magic.
Yeah.
What did you think about the glitchy, shifty effects of the beasts?
Is it too close to Raya the Last Dragon? That's all I kind of thought about.
I was thinking more like digital glitching than... Maybe not too digitally, but like...
Yeah.
They aren't supposed to be in this world. Like, they're unnatural things.
They're not fully of... Yeah. I don't know. It's too techy for me, maybe.
Maybe not like...
I don't know. It might work.
Glitching isn't the right word. The reason I wanted to do that was the reason that it came about is because I wanted it to get the jump on Guyan, and like the idea that it starts running at him and Guyan's like, yeah, I got this, but then all of a sudden it's just faster. So not glitching necessarily in like it's shifting.
It's
spatially.
chaotic.
It's chaotic, meaning, or its nature is shifting. So like its nature is shifting between like the nature of a bear, which would charge slowly, I guess, and the nature of say a cheetah, which charges fast.
Yeah.
So like, you see what I mean? So like, it doesn't quite fit within everything.
I think we can play with it. I didn't like glitching because it's too techy.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Or it could be kind of like they're kind of phasing in and out or something kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like
so we need a fantasy word for glitchy, if you can think of it.
Let us know in the comments. Now we gotta move this along though, because we only have so much time. But we solved the magic.
We solved the magic.
So we did an episode like forever ago. I don't even remember what we talked about, but we talked about magic system video, and I think that's nothing compared to this now.
No, absolutely no.
So this is all Aiden. He solved it. I've struggled with it forever, and then he told me this, and I was like, "Holy crap, that works!" Okay, explain it.
Okay, so here's the thing. So we got to limit magic. So in the book that you...
A little bit of backstory.
Okay, go.
So the little bit of backstory is that I had two different magic groups. I have the hunters, who have more of an elemental magic, and I have the magi, which is the wizards in this book, that had more of a Jedi type magic, where
they do whatever.
The problem was I couldn't figure out how to reconcile those two things to make sense.
Also, the Magi were way too powerful.
Magi are way too powerful. Hunters are,
And yes, so the Magi that are in this story that we're talking about now, Ro, Ogorth, Guyan, like, they are the Magi, and thousands of years later, they are the old ancient enemy that is coming to destroy the world as they know it.
Which may change.
But long journey between then and now. Anyway. So the idea for magic is that we had to limit it somehow, but add some gentle rules, right? So one of the best ways to do it is a limited resource. So I was thinking in my head, why is the Evertree so important? Besides, like, it's important.
It's cause plot.
Like, they got to get to the Evertree. The Evertree holds the world together.
That's our shirt. Cause plot.
So this is my plot armor. So my thought was like, what if you literally need parts of the Evertree to do magic? And then different parts of the Evertree do different kinds of magic. For instance, a Gorath staff, which shows in chapter 4, like, he needs the staff in order to do magic, right?
When he uses it, it burns up a part of or breaks part of the staff.
Withers away, something like that, but uses it as fuel for the spell, right?
Yeah.
So he has this really long staff, and then as he uses it, it gets shorter and shorter, right? That's kind of what I was thinking about it. And I was thinking about how, for them, they have to be... Why they don't just use all of their magic all of the time... for the Magi is because they think that the Evertree is gone, like that they know. They don't know that this world also has an Evertree.
Yeah. And so that would be like, that's why you haven't really seen him he won't use magic here.
Right.
Because
what they have is it. And that's why I was thinking, so before we talked about why is Ro going into the forest? And that's because... And I suggested something like, what if she's going to find a weapon, like just a bow, like a really nice family heirloom bow, because their means of making weapons that good is gone now. So like it'd be worth it to go save it. But it was also like, I don't know. But what if it was this? There was a staff from one of the Magi that was left out there. And they need to be able to do magic, especially for the trek, the journey that they're trying to do to go find their new home. So maybe that's why she's going out to the forest, is to try to find that staff. And maybe she does.
The only problem is that they would have never lost a staff in the woods. If it's that important.
Well, no, think about it like this. Like, they tasked this group search party to go up to the top of a mountain to go...
They get attacked and killed, and they leave the set. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, it's been 2 weeks. They should have been back by now. Yeah. Something like that.
which we haven't even talked about. We've totally left off Artemis and Morthil. We completely forgotten about them in the story.
We haven't really had a chance yet.
We need to go back and reread them.
Almost like in an outlining episode. Do you think we should have an outlining episode? I think we should have an outlining episode because this is freaking ridiculous.
Okay, so the Magi, that's where the idea of the awakening happened and why they burned up their own tree. So that's going to be kind of the secret. Like, the Magi's dark secret is that they abused their power of the original. They were harvesting too much from it. They were destroying the tree, and so the tree died.
Yeah.
And then they destroyed their world.
And the only person who knows is Agorath.
The only person who knows is Agorath, but he's not telling anyone. So that's going to be the dark secret that kind of comes to light and adds the schism.
Yeah. And Schism. Yeah. We talked about also that maybe their Evertree in their world was significantly smaller and therefore more influenceable by a single person. Mm-hmm. So like maybe Agorath chopped down the Evertree or something.
Or like bent it to his will or
something like that, and it just snapped or died.
Yeah. But that's how, let's keep it on the topic. That's how the magic worked for them.
Yeah.
How does it work? So the idea of the story is that it's the origins of the wizards, the Magi, and it's the origin of the hunters, which is Ro, is what Ro will become.
Right.
So,
and the difference between the reason that
in the future they're enemies.
Yes. The reason that the hunters are so significant is because their magic comes from the bond between wolf and rider, and they don't need Evertree stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think in your book you could later use and change, like, nobody knows that you can use the Evertree's stuff to do magic.
Yes, that's a lost thing. Yeah. So how does it work for the wolves and the hunters?
So for the wolves and the hunters, it comes from the bond of it, and they can only do one element.
Which kicked off by the Evertree. So that's Ro's relationship to the Evertree. Yes. Is she kind of the tree gives kind of the first gift of that. That's how I see it.
Right.
Gives like the gift of, I'm bonding you together, and now you have this magic of fire or something. And then now that's like passed down.
Right.
Or like it like opens up the connection, and then, you know.
Or maybe the Evertree always has to solidify the bond.
Or always. Could be true. Because remember, the capital city is going to get built around the Evertree.
Right. So maybe the reason that the hunters are always at the Evertree, and that's kind of their home base, is because
that's where they get bonded together. That works better.
And then they have to they have to do the job of pairing a wolf and a rider together and make sure it's a good match, because you can't undo the pairing.
Right.
And then what if there's a pairing that's bad?
Yeah.
Or what if someone forces a pairing?
A lot of things later on.
Notice how rules equal freedom, Brendan.
It's like a budget.
Almost.
So, so the idea is that, like, the Magi are more powerful with magic, but their resources limited. So they've got to be careful. So they can hit you harder and hit you with more power, but they only have so much.
Like, they need
Whereas the hunters, the wolf riders, they're unlimited.
Yes.
It's like Avatar: Last Airbender. Like, they can just make fire, use it, but they're not as strong.
Yes.
So it takes more hunters to maybe overpower. That's what equalizes them, essentially. So I think it works really great. I'm a big fan of it. That's might have been the first thing that you've said where you're like, I figured it out, and then you told me, and I was like, yep, that works. I was like...
You want to know something else ridiculous, though? Is I gave him this idea years ago, and you were like, nah, I don't like that.
I know. I'm the worst, and I apologize.
You were stupider when you were younger.
Well, aren't we all?
Yeah, seriously.
So, anyways...
I was a genius when I was 10. I'm an idiot now.
I don't think so. All right. Well, so that's it for this episode. We've got beginning of chapter 4. We've got a good start in the story, although I think we need to go back, reread
and remember.
Grab a couple of like, okay, where do these characters go? And then we've got the Awakening. Finally explained that, which is great.
Finally makes sense.
And we've got
Magic figured out.
Magic and the Origin of the Dark Beasts, kind of.
Kind of, yeah. If you want to see our previous Magic videos, you can check it out here. If you want to see everything from the beginning, check it out here.
Don't forget to check out Wattpad. Very important.
Oh yeah, Wattpad. If you want to stay caught up on the story, I think it's a decent read. We're open to edits and open to suggestions. So feel free to leave a comment down below. And yeah.
That's Writing Quest. See you
Huzzah.
next time.
Huzzah!